Dear Fox News judges and Judge Andrew Napolitano, because I asked you first. Through administration, since before the World Trade Center attack, people intercities colluded intercampuses. Now, what they colluded with, they don't know the extent of, because of how offensive evidence reception, data reception, and identity reception, and ground reception was and is all juxtaposed with that breaching method that had employed things like slavery. Only the extent of it is debatable. But those extents are being debated and have been debated with A, therefore B. Logic and exceptions to the exception nature, fake ones, self-valued. That, in other words, with the convictions and the opinions and defenses of themselves by logic, for example, regarding uses of critical race theory, regardless of sides regarding our opinions with that. Theory is part of it. They're using theories and they're pretending other people have theories and they're keeping the debate and they say, okay, go to courts to solve things. Originally and still the courts, individually, the police forms in the political branch, originally still individually grouped and together. There were methods needing to increasingly hide life progressions and value of being and having been hurt. Each age of correlation natures actually inherent active and progressive means, and by sequence true. Because there are 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. In demonstration of how they are that same shared identity of simultaneous nature. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, not a police form, not a criminal, not a judge. There are proofs that the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, this is why and how they are manifest this way. And many pray. See, many wanted to say. They want to be an audience and have it where others aren't lied about. I was attached to fake words. And there's collusion in it by Fox News, Fox Connecticut News. Because that use of the ground location, there are other police forms since they were kids. There are programs when they were kids. And this is also right before a 2006 district court case in New Haven, Connecticut. People involved with Thaddeus Grabowski and others involved as co-defendants with him and with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, were their co-defendants in a 2006 case. Before that case and since, I asked people to report things. They hid that. And they make confessions, demonstrations of how they have too. There are family members involved with this. This is not just Connecticut and New York and Washington, D.C. Dear Patton and Boggs, too, please respond to mandated law. We have there was timed and there was coordinated abuses, even sexual, of girls and young women by the same ones that are supposed to be pretending to be against it. Everyone's against those things, but they've been using they've been separating issues and subjects. They've been hiding. In other words, they have people make confessions about their roles with investigators, on and off the campuses, intercities through time, and then they just keep speaking anyway. In other words, there are ways you could say, okay, let courts solve things, because the courts are involved with the locations criminally. That's what I'm saying to you. People, Americans, not you judges. I'm not speaking to you that way, you guys. I'm asking you to follow mandated law. I wrote this on Facebook. They've been fabricating Facebook posts, writing fabricated audio and video. The police forms who were allowed to use, quote, the right to lie, unquote, where they don't have the right to, since founding, pounding drums. American to discern American history, you discern that breaching method that sickly, distinctly hurt every American, every colonist, and that includes the Native Americans as hyper colonists, even more valuable too, positive or negative. You can't help but be more valuable because it's positive. It can't help but be temporary positive. But more and more, everyone's off that native system, pure, where it's tied to why and how we use words like value, where we use words like time, forever. See, only the extent that we are forever in nature is debatable. So, but we have such a debate offensively, formally, the interbranch with physical delusions, criminally foreign influence, self-valuing. They already be used remotely. Each location, area in the state, each body. That's why and how, shock and awe answer are the descriptions of what Jim Crow law is about. It is about where and how what was entrenched wasn't engineered. Criminal insidious is nature's propagation method. Nature/S propagation method. See, every modern country had to grab a name because it had that name is increasingly need to be used at locations, areas, and states. No matter if they use that, we use those words not just because those are words, because they were revealed by what the ancients revealed before, when the species volume was going by the identity of hyper-simultaneous nature, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, again, which itself led and revealed why and how the languages have a better, even the letters of the languages have a better than living relationship to themselves. Only the extent of it is debatable. Again, but people are still debating things offensively with physical delusions, criminal foreign influence, self-value. Theater as criminal insidious. It can't be legalized. Increasingly, since founding, victim predators, fact cheap in nature wise, they couldn't afford to defend themselves from criminal insidiousness all kinds of ways, where they are quality of fact cheap in nature, time treatments, premises treatments, sequence treatments, identity treatments, and so everyone only heard people, it's this, this is side, this person's view, and then what's their view? In other words, they're preventing sequence shifts and fake words they attach me to, and they attach my family to, other people are tied to us, and to other people. They do this to everybody. I caught them through phenomena. So leading up to, in 2006, in the district court case in New Haven, Connecticut, were also names that are tied to names that were involved and are involved further with proven before that district court part of a case /S in New Haven with defendant and in the former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities, the former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, same person recorded and involved with people with families connected directly and indirectly and corrected for them by the breaching method, but also by the the lie progressions. In other words, where the quote perfect world unquote is used by people, where they speak to justify where and how they don't do things that they're obligated to do, like follow mandated law outside of courts. So since everyone was a kid, formally, and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, even through the art, no one's paying attention. What commonly are they saying to us? They are blaming on other things, others, and or on selves, with the breaching method caused. and where and how that is a value. You don't go to a math class and leave out the different parts of it. And, I mean, that's what they do. They separate things. They have time used simultaneously, too fast, too slow to get over on forever nature, sickly, distinctly at all locations. Then further, intersciences. And further, and now intersciences through other people, though, to hide collusion at all locations. Which, in other words, everyone was used remotely. Everyone was sickly, distinctly worse than colonized, worse than just enslaved. People separate slavery from the torture. You separate it from the breaching method right there. You separate it from the identity theft / fraud / slanders. You separate it from the breaching method right there. You guys, humanity, you guys have prevented the significance of such things. Then you want to speak with a nature what? Call me a name? You can't even follow interbranch switches names. They're lying to judges with other judges. They're hiding behind how they have all these other nations like Korea, Afghanistan, involved with campuses. And those countries, too, are involved with keeping it here and there. All they're keeping is a sick, fake suit and tie in the counters, and victim predators only capable of defending notions of sciences that can't defend themselves and afford all that is actually capable of being discerned by the human correlation nature, using our actually at each age of it. We are on a system that is tied to, that is tactical from the one actual. See how each of these, the plants that we still have memory of, they have different sensitivities. They have different, and then, they're distinct, non-distinctly, and simultaneously in demonstration of the same thing, which is also about what is simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous. It is the nature of positive that criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments can't be. And you cannot legalize that. So it's, and we have to have people from all the different, they've translated effectively the breaching method, translated how the locations are involved with the breaching trap, torture, slavery against everyone. So we don't counter that by countering each other. We counter that by admitting as one. And we admit as a species body too. We have to understand that other countries have the same syntactic trap they're in, same identity theft, fraud. They don't know what to. In other words, precedence is criminally foreign influenced countries A through Z. That's all has been known. Victims that figure, okay, it's differentially criminally foreign influenced. I'm gonna just keep myself not criminally foreign influenced. But right through the schools, so then they can't do it, and then everyone leaves out the important jobs and attention to them. So still, no. In other words, they're also making it either court cases are recorded or they're not, because they've been fabricating audio and video in the interbranch, because that's how they're only capable. In other words, that breaching method too employed. The negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, what really is behind the killings, what really is behind responses to them. They're all, and one of the things that records is how mandated law is not followed. Interbranch has been forging role for switching names roles, also without private tie to them. You know how they've been using medical families, pretending they had conversations, doctors with their kids that went to my schools, involved with Tim O'Brien and Rick Cianfaglione, with people at for example, at Quinnipiac University, a Kevin Harris. I never had a conversation with Kevin Harris in my life. only he tried to pretend other with passions and emotions. And one time coming out of a school door, and then we went to their house real second. We're in a room. We didn't talk to anyone when we left, in a living room. I never saw his mother there, whatever. I don't know their names. These, in other words, for example, these are people, intercampuses through time. They've been spreading lies, illusions through the kids. Because these are foreign and domestic military, too. Like with a Kalvinskis family. And people all along the route from Wells Road to in Wethersfield to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. And on and off Central Connecticut State University. And Paul Manafort Drive. And the other, all four sides of that campus is and was recorded through time, involved intercities. You know, they have the different sciences there. They have the people who are trained for education. They have people who are trained maybe just for the arts, English arts, rather than English science to be educated. You know, or they have people that go there for criminal justice. They have people that run prisons that are trained for that, and they're trained, they work with the other jobs. Everyone's an expert, leans on an expert. And they can't think but through their process how to handle things like, and they can't handle exception nature without asking someone else. And so everyone's butting into people's business, and they're increasingly fabricating audio and video, because that's how they've been hiding it, because they never were integrity. And in other words, where they were integrity, because we're our species is all automatically, we're awesome. See, the species is enslaved. No matter how powerful you could get, you don't have the strength. You could be a king, pharaoh. No one's going to have this. No one has the strength to get countries individually grouped and together the way. It teaches us about that. The reason we are that is because one identity of hyper-simultaneous, hyper-relativity, as the identity of hyper-relativity per science, no theory, is one identity of simultaneous nature that has to be defined distinctly from the three identities of simultaneous nature that are bound, individual grouped, and species identity of volume /S. The hyper-invisible is juxtaposed with the invisible also in demonstration of this, as all parts of languages were revealed to teach. They have the ones like Arabic and English go together. These sounds, they have in other words, the sounds of our species. Now we were watching the other day a wolf, and it was going, oh, and it really looked happy, but it was like, they said it just came out of the winter, and all the wolves were in the distance doing the same thing. Now, that's why, too, the American history begins with understanding how they tactically denatured the identity of the ground and the identity of our native humanity. Value progression system. Where's they going to get clean food? They weren't hunter-gatherers first, by the way, wherever that phrase came from. They cultivated things, but then everything got tactically denatured. So now they have to use other people's systems, other people's values. In other words, this is how much this is, from a denatured ground. And as syntax nature, where nature's trying to, where we speak and make distinctions for its reasons. We could be and stay systems other. It forces demonstrations of it forced space nature transfer, leads of IDs. You guys can't handle your lawyers and the interbranch, all privatized to them. Every country. They can't handle. But in other words, mandated law outside of courts, though. That's not what I was, but that's what it is about, the identity of the ground. They can't handle free speech. For example, that's not what I was going to say, but it's all the same. That's what it means. They can't handle the quality of it. They use time treatment simultaneously, too fast, too slow, every day, more and more, as victims, but as victim predators. And so when they defend that, too, it's the uses of criminally foreign influence premises treatments. Precedence itself. What were Jim Crow laws about? Criminally foreign influence precedents. Where did the criminal foreign influences come from? In other words, came from common sense, actual honesty. Everyone knows. A lot of people want to be an audience that doesn't have fake between us. Speaking about American history, in other words, that criminal foreign influence came from the breaching method. That Sickley first did that to the Native Americans. That same method, it wants and needs grouped in individuals other than natural for other reasons too, because it needs to hide its own. And then that makes and keeps insidious natures that need to hide for their own reasons. The same sequence shifts finite active progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds, even against themselves, everyone still. Self-value. Someone wants to write a meme. Then they want to defend that. Oh, it doesn't mean anything though. Then they make opinions when someone makes convictions and opinions with no physical delusions. See, we have physical delusions wrought, interbranch, and all private tied to them. We would have overcome that. And other countries individually grouped into together too. Listen to the people of psychology speak. They've been stacking fake things in databases. You're going to see some sick lawyers and logic. See, it's not all about they value when they make opinions anyway. That and how in other words, there are exceptions to there were slavery's proof. There are exceptions to why our founding parents wanted and needed us to embrace economy. The people, in other words, that was forced by the breaching method. All sickly, distinctly enslaved. Everyone, even our founding parents. You guys steal their identities every day. They're experts on them, quote, unquote, the quote, experts on them, unquote, steal it every day. And many pray. See Marbury versus Madison. See, George Washington could tell no lies. So when people say that it was writ that he owned slaves, he wanted us to say. That's exactly why they're making a revolution. That's exactly, and he wanted us to understand and know how if they found out their actual roles were putting forth what would be saying that we're supposed to defend the Constitution unabridged. That means simultaneous value, their values simultaneously. And the nature of the law, it doesn't mean trick, fakes, games. Been fabricating things since founding, pounding drums. So they can't move as a system. They can't think. They can't defend what they call practical. Our formal people, because they are kept with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and an identity of insidiousness that is effectively maintained without anybody discerning, because this was sophistication here since before our founding parents were even born. So slavery was sickly distinctly in the North, and it was sickly distinctly in the South, because it was designed to keep sickly distinctly, sickly non-distinctly. Our fact-keeping nature is enslaved. The complete, in other words, our identities are stolen, tortured. Fox Connecticut News attached me to fake words. They did this because a whole bunch of people tied to the former director of the FBI, other police forms, and judges rolls with their extended family members, like with the Delaferro family and the Spada family, people on Two Rod Highway, on Hangdog Lane, involved with identity thefts and frauds. In other words, they'll tell you this is a method that has people, that has the overt criminal enterprises, the interbranch, all private tied to them, like the prisons, families, and stuff like that. Has them say things in time where people are going to be. So then when they go back and say, I don't know those people, in other words, they pretend we're lying. And they use where they use time treatment simultaneously, too fast, too slow, while they're simultaneously fabricating audio and video interbranch, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Kids that brought up a whole bunch of natures of child abuses and worse. When I was a kid, says strangers. Then they would it became relevant for different arrests, and the people involved as the victims and the people against them were in collusion with the judges, also speaking fake things into records, and with all kinds of natures of federal crimes. But see, these are police forms also involved with the buildings next to the state capitol, as that are also involved next to with the locations next to WFSB. Look into the eyes of this Suzanne guy and his wife. God knows what she looks like. He attached me to fake words. He attached little kids and myself to fake ties to doctors me as a kid too. And there's a Leahy family of doctors involved with some untimely deaths, with drugs and medicines crimes, with Hartford Hospital, with some foreign and domestic doctors too, that are involved with houses on my street, also involved with families that answer the phones for Wethersfield police through time, that were involved in their confessions too, because they make sequence shifts. They make problems, so they make you respond to it or you don't respond. And if you respond, they use that more sequence shift, and they keep stacking on the fake things that came before that. They keep separating subjects too. So I still haven't gotten writing, and there's been confessions. So there are various police departments of the same nature and of different natures, and then on top of that, the families with the private that work with Central Connecticut State University. And what we have to know also is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. You know, they're doing things and using methods of predicate acts and ones to hide them, relevant to how they need really to have the police stations off campus and on campus, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. See, not one campus where the science is, where they share an identity. See, that identity was and is effectively maintained through all arrays of natures of identities, titles, location, incapable of being discerned, of being afforded to be discerned. I mean, the quality of fact-keeping nature necessary to counter or even to understand and speak about properly the breaching method that was against our founding parents. Yeah, and that means the Native Americans are our founding parents, distinctly. That's why presidents are president/chief. See, when they are victim predators that are victims of a sick education, criminally foreign influence, when they pretend to be about democracy. playing those games, pretending, okay, we're going to leave what people decide. They made the wrong outcomes. Witch trials. What were witch trials about? That's child abuse. There's collusion on all kinds of levels and natures of it, off campuses originally, and then consciously, methodically, on and off campus through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. Same use. If you put your kids homeschool or private school, it's connected for them. The sequence shifts are increasingly hyper relevant. So Kevin Knisselis too, and Dana Knisselis. I don't know if that's your name. I don't know. You guys, they're people from Central Connecticut State University. Have you involved with and in other words, there's also a guy who said that Mr. Abruzzi, and also girls that said that confirmed, which Joe DeMauro also confessed and demonstrated with Mike Kerr too, and a Jerry Kerr. There are more than one Jerry Kerrs, but there's a Jerry Kerr who was an officer, Jerry Miller, right before the pandemic, also brought up, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also, people online, the police, and people all along Route 3 have something to do with the state judicial branch offices and names associated with that. And mine. And with the Spider family's confessions. And with the house next to them, because there's a Bob Chase who said that there's a Phil Cololo is one of the names, further involved with the principal child abusers campus. And with the falsified police reports against me from backgrounds, because they had to hide live progressions. A whole bunch of kids who went and had conversations with police when they were kids, that they brought up those conversations. Then they made the kids. I have an affidavit. There was an affidavit years ago from Chris Walters, a stranger, sought me out to make confessions after we were in a car. And with my neighbor, like he's tied to their people. They were involved with programs with kids, and including with police forms on and off Central Connecticut State University since they were kids, and with doctors involved. So you have doctors who are cops who are sick in their souls. That's how you have the courts and one of the many ways the courts and the prisons tied to them, all private tied to them, even down to where they live. And uses of corners. People are increasingly kept needing to hide life progressions and self-valuing the same exact sequence shifts, final active progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds, timed instances against others and against themselves. People don't have time to care. So you have the same news companies making allegations against people at locations online, with Facebook, with YouTube. They're lying to the YouTube police and with them. And with the people. Their company, that's not their job to follow the law. See, the law has been using these platforms to hide their own personal needs to hide, and grouped and together. Together, how do you answer? How do you respond to what their takes on what the witch trials were about? And how could that be left out from what was simultaneous slavery? And how could the torture be left out from that simultaneous? Because you guys can't stand the simultaneous, because it brings revelations. So how could you speak for women's rights, girls' rights, when you're having that box, people stacked on? Countries A through Z, shock and awe, responses to it, opinions or convictions. They make opinions and convictions, but then when it comes time to follow mandated law, even more, these are people involved. What led up to the 2006 case in Connecticut was proven. Post-dated documents had been presented to the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Center, right before the attack. postdated from in the court, and then the court ruled they were filed late. But then that was proven that they had been filed on time, time-stamped, timely, delivered to the court, but they had been postdated from inside the court. So that led up to the 2006 case with a whole bunch of federal criminals from other cases, and a former director of the FBI as their co-defendant, and their lawyer, Robert Chevalier, the lawyer of Robert Luskin, and the other, his co-defendants, like a Thaddeus Grabowski, John LeConte, and another one involved with their neighbors and kids that were put in classes with me. And I got out of one. And then they went ahead and pretended I knew that person, tried to make exceptions too. They make exceptions. So in the Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also rules with the depositions, people associated with the depositions of former director of the FBI and his co-defendants. There were also the family members of those courts. Confirmed, confessed, demonstrated, recorded. Also rolls with my military sources, which are not my sources willingly. They were influenced, in other words. They can pretend that they're being influenced. With that Kavinsky, there's Eric Burgess associated, and people with what they said was the dean's son. I don't know his name, and I didn't respond. I don't know them. They were used by investigations and investigators who also have been fabricating audio and video transcripts on using the phenomenon of how campuses are recorded 24/7 to make up fake things and to call people liars, because they have liars, interbranch cliques, and their family members. Originally and still, no one wants to speak about what caused bridge trials, because it was the breaching method, but it was also the interbranch with other motivations. They're all sick. Nature is going to continue to demonstrate that they don't know how to speak for practical reason, use Immanuel Kant's phrase, which is a human phrase. So when I not to put it towards theory or some like with sense and sensibilities, to understand what history. We don't erase. In other words, too, if there's things that everyone is like, oh, that's prejudice. That's evidence, not of prejudice. That's evidence of premises treatments, of quality of fact treatment nature treatments, of uses of the ground locations, of, in other words, because that was all used remotely too. See, they're wiping away our evidences. They're making roles with that too, increasingly self-valuing, tactically sabotaged. Increasingly, American history, quality of evidences treatments, data treatments, quote, fact treatments, unquote. The quote, fact finding, unquote, of Congress has been through administrations. Your Honors, now speaking to you, I was speaking to the world again, but Your Honors, in America though, because in other words, we can't just focus on, we have to focus just on ourselves as individual America. And we're in a semi-ancient trap. We're not going to accept, in other words, it's worse than just slavery and torture combined, identity thefts and frauds. To tell someone to go walk from the bottom of the people stacking and be poor in New York City. And you can't leave out how that infrastructure was shared, justified, self-valued by the identities that spoke for and speak for countries A through Z as victim predators. as victims, but as predators, as everyone, in collusion with that insidiousness. All there's like a that is like with the since semi-ancient times, where and how they had those sick laws. It's not like you could go to the court and say, okay, we're against the slavery, no matter if what color you were. Then you were going to feel how more you were enslaved. So we haven't even had our founding parents defend it. But people want to use passions and emotions. But they won't follow mandated law, and they won't let other people use calm speech or use their passions and emotions, because they get involved in other words. There are names to call, there are reasons to call the individuals grouped together, the people of the interbranch names, because they call other people names with delusions, but that's juxtaposed simultaneously with criminally foreign influence supremacy agreements. Juxtaposed while that was being and having been sustained, while it was being used remotely, all that together was fact cheap in nature, being used remotely too, being engineered. Everyone blaming other things, others, and or on themselves. The real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidious natures, wrongdoers. I'm using those words, those phrases with you, those legal phrases, because the lawyers couldn't do it since founding. Because the bar itself has been delusions wrought, simultaneously criminally foreign influenced, and pretending others as victims, but as victim predators. They have to hide the quality of their judgments, people A through Z, and how they've been getting away with doing it is per why we have to understand where and how all locations were used by the breaching method, sickly and distinctly. And we have to begin with how they did it against the Native Americans. And we don't let that ever go. And you have to, in other words, what is the hyper simultaneous? What is everything at once? What is everything at once? Your identity, for example, has a relationship to positive and to negative simultaneously. / hyper simultaneously. In demonstration of this, we are a semi-nature relationship to the hyper simultaneous, to the hyper relativity, the identity of hyper relativity. That is the identity of the hyper simultaneous per science. See, they brought the theory of relativity to keep worse than obfuscated the tactically denatured thought processes and honesty and soul processes of humanity. Then they pretend you're saying bad things about humanity, rather than let the premises be used, rather than let sequence true be used, rather than let all the actually recorded uses of the ground locations from being demonstrated. You see all these school shootings? You guys have theories and physical delusions. And then the formal people that keep pretending passions and emotions. You're missing how they've been preventing mandated law, pretending others simultaneously, how they've been getting away with it. For example, that's all used remotely. You can't separate that from. We have to use what is simultaneous. We don't leave out exceptions. What's the economy about? Well, they had to hide their roles until we could get strong enough to have the prayer that someone could figure this out. There are proofs that George, in other words, is recorded. That's what he said. Wanted the Constitution unabridged. He didn't say, I don't know if he said that, he didn't specifically like that. That's what was communicated to us. Our founding parents communicated they want the Constitution unabridged. That means simultaneously valued. That means equality of fact, human nature, by the nature of the law, that if you follow it, it's going to figure out, okay, these people are in a trap. This is going to cause negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. They know those kids are going to kill each other because they've been doing it since. I mean, how many? It's not political parties came to offices and things like that, and there's still kids shooting each other because we're in that trap and everyone leaves it out. So when we counter it, we're going to do it simultaneous with it. Evolution science only feels like games. There are so many things we could do simultaneously. Take away all the excuses and ferret out all the uses of passions and emotions that are preventing their function actual from being demonstrated. They're offensively measuring and maintaining them distinctly opinions interbranch regarding the January 6th treatments and all the treatments leading up to that. Don't forget, since before cars, it was illegal to make homes even better. In the suburbs, we're already tactically denatured. We're still on that scale. That was part of the torture and slavery of everyone. So they made it sickly distinctly so everyone would say, freedom would be felt relatively. So you could be one of the world's millionaires or billionaires. And still, in other words, it's still, the nature's tactically denatured. The only way to fix the earth and be able to afford to fix the ocean and things like that in time, we have to have the species mind. We have to have that. In other words, that's what the future wants. You want to care about the kids in the future? That's who you enable. That's how you defend. You don't just keep building better weapons. All that money and value then defended increasingly not that system that uses that and uses the absence of it sickly. In other words, no one will understand that unless we have the right sequence treatments and on time, because these are things real fast that kids can learn and understand. About American history, we have to understand criminal insidiousness. We have to understand how that breaching method worked and used all identity ground locations, used the syntax, nature, therefore the function before computers, database relationships this way. Hear many pray. The republic for which we stand had been revealed by ancients of a sophistication that came from before the sciences became self-valued, criminally foreign influenced in semi-ancient times and since. And that could not fathom, as victims, how nature would continue to demonstrate the causes of it, but now through their roles with it, as uses of science and stuff like that, at locations though. Are there in those locations more and more connected? How could someone pretend they speak and care for passions, emotions about science? About science is about American history or about the law. That's how you defend. Right. Betrayal tribes. All I need is one person to respond to me, get mandated law filed. They switch names into branch. I've been asking since before the World Trade Center attack. And these are also people. Then they start mixing in people, fake conversations with me. Same ones involved with I never saw them around my campus ever. Same ones though involved with set up exceptions, tried to make exceptions years after people graduated. As people involved with also needs to hide lie progressions at other campuses and vertically and horizontally. They're keeping people at middle schools needing to hide lie progressions and identity thefts and frauds roles with the fake things that they're spreading through the grammar schools. And then they even use a kid from other schools I went, a kindergarten I went. In other words, even the kids next to the schools. Not just the kids, the businesses, the locations, even next to the post office, the sense and sensibilities of people, of formally, informally, overt criminal enterprises, private. The overt criminal enterprises and the private ones are recorded how kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, final active progressive lies, in actually recorded natures with the courts, cliques, and families. See, everyone left out. This effectively Captain Keeps uses of DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, the Department of Transportation. She uses each age of family members, of intelligence community, of people tied to them, people associated with religious locations where they have the sense and sensibilities, where there's identity theft, fraud, slander, torture, where they don't follow mandated law. They separate women's rights and men's rights, pretending to care for women as their roles covering sequence shifts. Per their roles, uses of locations where the investigators already had predicate acts roles in cases that they hid per roles more and more at locations, like on campuses and with the locations right next to it, and always next to the locations, like next to a body dumping spot of a serial killer, as reported, that person anyway, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with various natures of courts, families, and their roles with foreign and domestic, on and off campuses, relevant predicate acts, and ones in cases, uses of the depositions, locations of the depositions. Those same people involved with those court cases were involved with coordinated predicate acts on campuses, intercities, identity thefts and frauds, slanders online, coordinated, and at locations, uses of corners. This is where there are fact-cheating, nature-oriented predicate acts that were most serious and are most serious regarding the worst parts of colonization, which is in this. The breaching method was greater than, and it was more finite than colonization's value, /S, and while as them, and while as it. All exceptions and exception nature and demonstration is the same thing, no matter how powerful a leader gets. Locations, areas, and states are already self-valued. Criminally foreign influenced qualities of human fact-cheating nature. In names. So, where it counts, how it counts. In other words, they'll say that you're saying people are bad. That's why these things are here. And they're pretending they don't understand you. Pretending not to understand some people. In other words, the constituencies of both the Democrats and the Republicans And all branches use that word like politics with physical delusions, with ones that were measured, that was per the child abuse method, since they were kids. This is simultaneously elder abuse method, sickly, distinctly each identity, ground, location. And where it is sickly the worst, it is easiest to discern though. See, thank God, things that are so wrong, like those laws that they put against everyone, the Native Americans, simultaneously sickly distinctly against the colonists. That was to keep, again, how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. And to keep that self-value through other than its own, which it knew would be increasing because nature is going to keep demonstrating. In semi-ancient times, the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. The actual sophistication of the archaeological evidence /s that the republic for which we stand is America. And that stance has been degraded ever since founding. Oh, how could you say that? You still didn't even defend our founding parents. You still didn't even allow anyone to speak about American history true. You still have these games with the interbranch and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones and their kids from other classrooms, pretending we had conversations, using passions, emotions, sequence shifting, and with overt criminal enterprise, the private ones at time, through time, same ones involved with the forensics locations, involved with debates, with the investigators involved with that, and with the locations next to the body dumping spot /s reported and confessed and demonstrated involved with that. Same people involved on off the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices with Faenza families, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also involved on off Two-Route Highway and Hangdog Lane with a whole bunch of men and women associated with Kevin Dillon, and with the judges involved with the abuse of the girls. Didn't they have those girls make confessions to others? Didn't they pretend they know us? And they had all their boyfriends at the same time were never even in my presence before. Has something to do with this Mike DeMaine, Adam DeMaine, Eric Mendez, his brother with switching names, fake words with me, ever, and on the Wethersfield Police Department, and his roles with his brother on and off the New Britain Superior Court involved with predicate acts, also with child sex offenders, and medical and digital. And as the ones with it personally tied to the courts criminally involved, since before the World Trade Center attack, and with rape threats, and with the Facebook pages interbranch, New Britain Superior Court's Facebook pages, and with the Facebook pages of the campuses. They're pretending they make allegations about what people say. And they attach people even with their family members to fake words. And they're watch the behavior of crimes. You're an observer. You're gonna have people follow mandated law. Make sure I get a response for the confessions of from the campus with the confessions of the principal child abuser in jail. Someone still saying I haven't been responded to yet. And I didn't get the rest of the names. I didn't even get to tell about that yet. And the police are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through a whole bunch of others. They've been attaching little kids and their families that they had conversations with in the past to fake conversations with me now too. I never went and reported anyone there. I never had a conversation with those cops. They fake recorded things. That's recorded too. Don't pretend it's criminal to pretend that's personal. You guys know you did that. Now these are people also involved with with former director of the FBI in his co-defendant capacities, where he has these underlings involved with juxtaposed natures of federal crimes and uses of that too, because they have the types of experts involved with the databases, self-valued. They can't defend themselves without self-value. Everyone pushing off things to other people, and then more people making allegations against people. Of course, they have negative. They're increasingly self-valuing how they have what they don't like negative value, nature, progression, action, natures coming into the things that have nothing to do with healthcare, coming into the hospitals. So this is not by accident. Since founding, we have these delusions criminally